Welcome to Detroit's darkest times. I want you to do the big three right now. That's subscribe, hit the like button, and the notification bell. Before you listen to this video, I want you to click back off of it. Look up the movie The Burning Bed with Farrah Fawcett. Watch that movie and then click back onto this video. Today we're going to talk about violence, abuse, domestic violence. This is starting out when I'm a young child and lived on Trumbull Avenue in Detroit, Michigan. And this is a story of when I grew up. A lot of things went down as I was growing up, and I seen a lot of things, and a lot of stuff was bad, a lot of stuff was good, just different things. But today we're just going to talk about my upbringing and my family and things that happened, in my family. So here's the story. And when I was growing up, my dad, he had you might as well say a drinking problem because he drank a lot. But as we was kids, I could remember probably back to when I was like maybe 6 years old when I, started encountering this stuff. But what had happened is he would get intoxicated, and then he would want to beat on my mother. And then there's a lot of times that he would be okay, when he wasn't drinking, and then when he got well intoxicated, then he was just an abusive person. And as kids, I can speak for myself, as a kid, I really hated this. It was just a lot of stuff you had to go through. And anybody that's went through this when they was a kid, they could probably relate to what I'm talking about. And the people ain't never experienced it, this story may not even interest you. But the thing is I just wanted to talk about, as I was growing up, all the, things I encountered. And the reason I say watch the movie The Burning Bed with Farrah Fawcett is because this is a lot like how it was when I grew up. But there would be times where he would get well intoxicated, and then he would want to fight my mother, and he was a lot bigger than my mother, and he would beat on her and stuff like that. And then when people would ask what happened, some people knew what was going on, but then some people, if they asked my dad, he would say, if my mom had a black eye or something like that, he would say, the door hit her in the eye or something, just trying to cover it up. But it was really all horse shit. And, I just really don't know what was wrong with this person. But anyways, He was my dad, and I really think he just had a problem. He had a problem with drinking and stuff like that, but he drunk for many years since he was, I would say, a teenager. And I think people who drink real heavy for many years, I really think, it's just my opinion. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. But I really think that drinking for many years and stuff kind of takes a toll on your brain. And, somebody that's been around you a lot may see it when you're not drinking, the changes over the years. And then some people, may not see it until you're well intoxicated, and then they can see a big difference in the person. Now, most people who drink, if they drink a little too much, yeah, they're going to act a little different or whatever. But abusive person, you can really spot this when they get well intoxicated. But there's been many a times that my dad would beat on my mother, and there'd be times when my uncle and my aunt, they used to go out on the weekends to the bar, and my dad really didn't care nothing about going to the bar with them. He did go to a lot of bars, but only by himself or with his friends. And I remember one time he went to the bar with them, and then he showed out, and I think he smacked my mother or something like that. I think that's what I heard. And so he ended up coming back home, but I guess the police was called at the bar, and this was a bar called Jack Daniels Bar. I believe it was in Lincoln Park, Michigan, right outside of Detroit. But anyways, the police had brought him home, and then my mother had, was still with her sister and brother-in-law. And then she came home later, and then it was a big fight, because he always wanted to, I don't know what his problem was. I really just think he had something wrong with his brain, to be honest with you, now that I'm a lot older. But when I was a young kid, I really just didn't understand, what this was. But when you experience it at a young age, it still bothers you and scares you and stuff like that. But you really don't know if this is how it's supposed to be or what, because you're so young, But you know it's not right, regardless. But anyways, they would just get into some horrific fights and stuff all the time. Sometimes it would be like in the middle of the night. And, a lot of times her sister and brother-in-law would ask her they want to go out. My dad would be like, no, I'm going to stay home. She can go out with y'all or whatever. And then every time she'd come back, there would be a big fight, because by that time he'd be well intoxicated and stuff like that. And he was just an abusive person, to be honest with you. And, we couldn't figure that out. There'd be many a times that it'd be dead winter, like, I'm talking 0 degrees or lesser than that outside. I mean, very cold, about a foot of snow on the ground. And then we would have to leave in the middle of the night. And my mother had 7 children. And then we'd have to leave to get away, because he would just get so violent that you never knew what he was going to do. If he was going to harm one of the kids, or he always harmed my mother. But you just never knew what he was going to do. He was just real violent and stuff like that. And I will say this, back in the day, this occurred a lot more than it does today. Not saying that domestic violence don't go on today, because it does. And a lot of people just probably keep it quiet. And back then, if you ended up calling the police on your husband or something like that, a lot of times they would come and just say, it's a family matter, y'all just gonna have to work it out. And that's how it was back in the day. But nowadays, it's not like that. If they come to your house, one person's going to jail. And because they don't tolerate that domestic violence anymore, because it just got so bad over the years that people ended up, started killing each other, with the domestic violence. So that's why they're real strict on that. So if they get called to a house and it's a domestic violence call, somebody, most likely one person's going to jail. And that's the way it works today. But back then, it wasn't like that. So a lot of times people wouldn't even, people wouldn't call the police. They would just deal with it in their family and stuff like that. But getting back to when my dad used to get real violent with my mom and fight with her a lot, and he always, put marks on her and all that stuff. It was just horrible. And there's no excuse for another man to hit a lady for no reason. And I'm just totally against that because, I grew up around it, and that's why I'm just totally against it. And I really appreciate all women. I love all women, and I have respect for all women. And, I do not have no kind of respect for any man that hits a woman, beats on a woman, smacks a woman, any of that. If you're doing any of that, you ain't, you know, you're not you're not in the category of being a man. So, that's just the way that is. Because a man don't go around beating on women. And if you're doing it, you might want to seek help because you got a problem, you know. You got a serious problem if you're putting your hands on women. And so you might want to consider getting help. If you're listening to this and you're one of them cats, you definitely need help because people are looking at you in a different kind of way. And some cats will deal with you in a different kind of way if they happen to see you do it or if they happen to hear of you doing it. Sometimes that you'll get dealt with when you least expect it. Or karma can come at you and you'll be wondering why you're having so much bad luck. And it's probably the way you're moving. So think about that. Just keep this in consideration. Just treat the women well and you will get treated well. You treat people like you want to be treated, and that's what you got to do. But back to my story, there's been many a nights that my dad would be beating on my mom and stuff like that, and then she would have to gather us all up. You're talking 7 kids, all different ages, and it got to the point where a lot of times we would keep our shoes where we can find them and stuff like that, and our jackets where we can find them and stuff like that, because it almost became like a fire drill, you know what I mean? And it was horrible. But you had to get all your stuff together and bail, And basically it was basically you was trying to save your mom's life and save your life, because this is how bad it was. And all my siblings experienced it, but they might not want to, discuss it, talk about it, or they might even get upset because I'm talking about it. But this is my story, and I'm telling my story. You know what I mean? And if they don't want to talk about it or ignore it or act like it never happened or whatever, that's on them. But my story, I'm saying it because it just gives you some type of relief, and it's kind of like therapy when you tell your story and get your story, and you want other people to know about it because maybe some people's going through the same stuff. You never know, and maybe to help them out, maybe decide what to do or whatever. Because we used to wonder uh, why our mother wouldn't just leave this cat, even though he was our father. Why she wouldn't just leave him. But then we it was kids, so we didn't understand that you got 7 kids, and you probably don't know what to do, or you're probably scared to leave, or you probably ain't got nowhere to go. I mean, my mom had a friend, and she would her friend lived down the street, more closer to Tiger Stadium than where we was located at. We was located on Trumbull and Selden, and then her friend was located on Trumbull and Temple. So this is approximately about 5 blocks away from our house. But anyways, when it's dead ass winter, 0 degrees or less, a foot of snow, if not more. I mean, it was just icy. It was real bad in the wintertime. It still gets real bad in the wintertime. But anyways, we'd have to get our stuff together and bail out the house like at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. It just depends. And and then my mom would take us all to her friend's house down the street, which it was my dad's second cousin's wife, which we called her our aunt all the time, because she was like an aunt. And we'd go down there, but then when we had to walk through the snow, and you got just picture this: a lady that's got 7 kids, ranging from the ages of, let's see here, maybe 5 years old up to about 11, 12-year old, something like that. And yeah, take all these kids in the middle of the winter at night, all hours of the night, 0 degrees or better, and have to walk. We wouldn't take no car, we'd walk, because he would take the keys, or most of the time he'd have the keys, and you couldn't get away in a car because he'd keep the keys. So you literally just had to bail and walk. And just walking 5 blocks in that cold weather with small kids and stuff, it was horrible. And, then when you get to her house, my mom's friend's house, which we called her aunt, get to her house, she lived on the second floor. Then we'd have to knock on the door, yell up at the window and stuff like that. And then the people that lived downstairs, sometimes they'd come and, wonder what we're doing, and then they'd finally come to the door and let us in and stuff. And then that's where we'd remain that night. Sometimes we stayed a few nights, it just depends. And but this happened a lot, and I remember one time we was bailing, and my youngest sister, she didn't, they couldn't find her shoes or something. So then my oldest sisters and them, or my oldest brothers and them, they had to carry her because they couldn't find her shoes. So now she's got socks on, no shoes. It's just horrible, And so if anybody's going through this in life, I feel for you, because I know the feeling, and hopefully you can get past it, because, eventually down the road we got through it, but it was hell. I mean, hell. Anyways, them days was rough, you know. And one time he got mad because he knew after a while he knew exactly where we was going, so he got mad at my aunt for actually letting us in, you know. So she had this. Uh, Her boss had co-signed for her a Chevette, a brand new Chevette. And their boss used to help them. They used to work at the Mexican restaurant. This was Mr. Cadena in Detroit. And he would help them, you know, get their credit straight and all that, where was able to get, you know, stuff they needed. And he co-signed for her a brand new car. And then, now I didn't see this personally, but this is just what I was told. Uh, my They said my dad had got a gallon of dark brown paint from our house and then brought it down there, opened the can up, and dumped it on top of the car, and then left the can of paint on top of the car. And it was like dark brown paint, so it's all running down the car. And then the next morning, the landlord lived down the road, you know, a few houses down on Temple and Trumbull next to the dry cleaners. And he yells up at the window asking, you know, what happened to the car. So everybody's looking out the window and sees the paint can on the car and stuff like that. But like I said, I didn't see it. I don't know who did it, but that's just what we was told, you know. So, but anyways, it was just shit like that. It was just crazy. And them days were rough, you know, growing up in a battered home and then, you know, some days you had some good days, but you had a lot of bad days. And usually them bad days is the days you're mostly going to remember. You'll remember some of the good stuff, but man, this was some shit right here. I don't wish no children or no woman to go through the shit we went through. And, you know, and my siblings, if they see this video, they might take offense to it, you know, that I'm talking about it, but it's the real deal. You know, I usually don't sugarcoat nothing. I usually tell the truth, and this is part of my story that I'm telling, and this is the God's honest truth of what happened. You know, and it was just horrible. You know, to see your mom get beat and shit like that it was bad. And you know, we was all small children, so we really couldn't do anything, you know what I mean? But just yell and say, you know, stop beating my mother and leave my mother alone, and you know, all the shit the kids say when the parents are fighting and stuff. So, you know, main thing is, even if you're a couple that argue a lot of times you need to work on that too, because you need to argue away from your child, away from your children. Even if you don't have to be in the car and you go to the store or something and the kids are not with you or something, then, you know, talk it out then, or, you know, if you're going to do arguing or whatever, because even that affects children when they're growing up. If, you know, you're arguing and stuff like that, you know, it bothers kids to see their parents fighting each other, you know. So it's really bad, you know. So you know, so the main thing is just sorry about that. the main thing is just, watch what you're doing around your children, because you don't want them to experience any bad things like that, because it just is not good. And just, them cold winters and stuff like that. Some people remember them cold winters in Detroit that lived in Detroit and stuff, or, or still lives in Detroit. But the thing is, I got a whole nother outlet outlet on Detroit's winters because I literally had to walk through these cold nights for 5 blocks to go to my aunt's house just to get away from the violence and domestic violence and abuse and stuff like that. Because a lot of times you could be abused, but nobody even touch you. You know what I mean? Because just seeing stuff like that, and just hearing stuff like that, and watching, that's abuse. That's abuse in itself. For small kids to encounter. And it was just some rough times. And I don't know why. That would take place. But the only thing I could figure out is he just had something wrong with his brain, and this when he drank a lot or something like that, I think it just triggered. And a lot of times, it would be over nothing really, because sometimes we would all be just at home and nothing, nothing's going on, but he's just drinking or he's gone drinking. Then when he comes back, he's well intoxicated. Then he all of a sudden he just wants to beat on my mother. So it was horrible. I mean, and I can only imagine the stories that she could probably tell somebody if she was interested in telling her story. But I'm just speaking on the parts that I seen and the parts I went through and stuff like that, and it was just horrible. And as years passed, and then we moved on down Trumbull to Elm Street, and this is where they would end up parting ways, you know. And just like the movie The Burning Bed, that guy had a horrible death, and so did my father. But only he went a different way. You know what I mean? But he still had a horrible death because he went through something horrible. But, anyways, that being said, they ended up getting a divorce on Elm Street, and at this time, I'm about 11 years old when this happened. And really, a lot of us, some of us probably didn't agree with the divorce, but a lot of us was relieved. We was like, we was glad it was happening. Some people wasn't, some siblings wasn't, some was, because they was just tired of the bullshit. And then, so anyways, they separated and stuff like that, got a divorce. And then, you know, time went on. My mom had met this other dude, and this dude, he was the same damn way. He wasn't worth the shit neither, to be honest with you. Because the reason I say that, because if they're gonna beat on a woman and stuff like that, I just ain't really got love for you. You know what I mean? I just, you know, I just can't understand it. And with me being young and watching it and stuff like that, I just do not agree with it. I'm totally against it, you know. And but it's just something else, and I can't see that happening to somebody, some woman or something like that. It's just uncalled for. But this other guy that she had got with, he was, same way. He didn't show his colors right away, but then after, a little while, then he was the same way. He would get well intoxicated and then want to beat on my mom too. So really, this cat had a problem too. But I really just think, what they both had in common is they drunk all their life, and it just affects your brain, and you don't think it does, but it does. Because if you're doing shit like hitting on women and stuff like that, you got a problem, you know. And guys, blacking women's eyes or breaking women's arms and stuff, you ain't shit. You ain't nothing, you know. You're very lucky if you're doing that and you're still alive. You're very lucky to be around, to be honest with you. But I'm just totally against that, and it just really fires me up when I just think about men hitting women or putting their hands on women, and that abuse and stuff like that. I'm just really against it, and I just I have no use for it. But and there's many times that I seen where my mother was trying to better herself and stuff like that. She's always bettered herself, but the thing is, there was things that she done that he would do to try to stop it. Like, she was going to school or something like that, and she was going to like Wayne County Community College in Detroit. Sometimes he would like try to tear books up and stuff like that just to keep her from getting the education that she wanted and stuff like that. It was just horrible. And just for kids to see that, man, you know, it's just bad. And then, she would get new clothes and stuff like that. And he would try to mess her clothes up and stuff like that. I mean, it was just awful the shit that he did. And it's just no excuse for it. I give no excuses for it.